Welcome to Empowered by Iron, the podcast for female strength athletes by female strength athletes. We are your hosts, Dr. Kristin Lander from Fiercely Fuel Nutrition Coaching and Dr. Mary Morton, scientist and weightlifter. Together, we are Empowered by Iron. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Empowered by Iron. This week, we have a special topic for you, or topics. First of all, we want to wish you a happy holidays. This episode releases the week before the holidays, the official holidays, whether you celebrate Christmas or Hanukkah or, I don't know, anything else you celebrate. Kwanzaa. Obviously, I'm very uncultured. We wanted to wish you a very happy holidays, and we will see you in the New Year's. And while you're eating your hearts out during the holidays, which we're going to talk a little bit about today, we want you guys to keep in mind that in January, we are going to be running another Eat for Strength course for you guys. So keep an eye out for that. We'll be launching all the details and a way to purchase it in the new year. But until then, enjoy your family time and enjoy your training. Okay, so our first topic for today is going to be about food and training over the holidays.
Yeah.
Take it away, Kristin.
Well, so this is something that stresses a lot of people out, and I have a lot of clients that are emailing me a little bit stressed out about how to navigate the holidays. And I think that this is just in general a stressful time of year for a lot of people. And couple that with being out of your normal routine, it can be really anxiety producing, and I don't want it to be. So the biggest thing I have to say is that if you are in meet prep, even if you're traveling, you're probably going to still have to try to find a way to train, right? So keep up with your training as best you can. Find gyms. You can get on Facebook or the Googles and find some gyms that you can train at if you're traveling. If you are cutting weight for that meet, you're going to have to adhere to your nutrition plan, even though it's Christmas, or whatever holiday you celebrate. I have cut weight for a meet over the holidays and it sucked. I don't want to do that again.
But if you are, that's cool. Just stick to your plan. You can always have your little treats afterwards, but make sure you adhere to what you need to adhere to achieve your goals. Simple as that.
Absolutely. And so not only do we have like the day of whatever holiday you celebrate, but we also have like holiday parties and New Year's parties, and like patients are bringing me like muffins and cookies and like all kinds of things that I don't normally eat. So it's just, there's a lot of food this time of year. But the biggest thing that I want everyone to think about is just relaxing about it. It's okay. If you're not cutting weight, you can make room for some treats if you want them. The way I do this personally is that I actually just say no to excess treats, because I know in my family we celebrate Christmas, and when I go, I spend about 4 or 5 days at home in Minnesota with my family. And there are treats galore. We pack a lot into those 4 or 5 days. And so it's hard for me I'm really bad at estimating my macros. You guys know that I am a big macro counter. I'm a big fan of that. But I'm really bad at estimating, even though I've been doing this a long time. And so I kind of just try to eat a little bit more intuitively. And I know that those days I'm probably going to be over on some things and under on other macros. And I just try not to stress out about it. But in the days leading up to, or the weeks leading up to that trip, I just try to stay on plan as much as possible, which is definitely not a self-denial plan. Like, right, I have plenty of room in my macros for pizza or ice cream if I want to eat it, or cookies. Just try to rein it in. How do you handle this stuff, Mary?
For me, it's more of like a mental thing. So I don't ever tell myself I can't have anything, because then I will eat all of it. I try to really focus on the people that I'm going to be around. And because I have a history of disordered eating, I try to make it less about the food and more about the people. But something that really helps me is when I do celebrate things, or we have a family meal or whatever, that I know that I've overeaten. The thing that I don't do is I don't go weigh myself the next day or even the day after that.
Right.
Otherwise it just messes with my head, and I know that it's not real. Like, I didn't gain a couple pounds overnight. So I don't need that stress of thinking that I'm getting fat or putting on weight, or whatever the stress is, because that's what triggers my disordered eating, is to see that my scale's gone up more than what it normally does. That will cause me to restrict. So if I don't weigh myself, I typically don't worry about the food, and then that leads me to not overeating like at all. But if I weigh myself and I worry about food, I tend to binge. So mine is less
Right.
structured, but it's just like I don't have any rules, but I try to make it not about the food.
Exactly. I think you brought up a really important point, that like enjoy your time with your friends and your family, and don't focus so much on the food, especially, like if you do have to stick really strict to your plan because you're cutting from meat. That's one of the strategies I say, is like focus on the people. Remember what you're there for. And try, if you have to bring your own food, and let your family say what they're going to say. But if you have goals that are bigger than, that one day, then so be it. But absolutely focus on the people. And I think you have a really good approach, because you know yourself, and if you focus on what you can't have or what you can't do, then it sends you into a downward spiral. But I don't have a history of disordered eating, and I still won't get on the scale like the day after I had like a big, huge holiday family dinner. Cause I know I probably, if nothing else, like I just ate different foods and my
Mhm.
body is sensitive to that. And so I probably would have had more sodium than I normally would have, and I'm retaining water or whatever. So I avoid the scale the next day too.
Yeah, and I know that especially here in America, every single holiday we celebrate seems to be a holiday of food, and
Yeah.
that really really fucked with me when I was trying to recover from my disordered eating, because it seemed like no matter what I did, whether it was a holiday or hanging out with friends, it always had to revolve around food, and that drove me nuts. But
Hmm.
when I was going through it, I had to explain to my family. I was like, "Look, I know you made all these delicious treats, and I appreciate it, but I need to recover. Like, this is me. I need to recover for me. I'm here to spend time with you. If I don't eat your food, please don't be offended. I'm really struggling here." So just
Yeah.
take a chill pill and try to enjoy my neurotic self.
Because what would happen if you had eaten that food? Like, did it send you into like a
A binge.
tails?
It would be
Okay.
a binge, because I was not at the point that I could control myself.
Hmm.
So if I had one, I'd have 1,000. So I tried to live by the rule of kind of like, don't restrict, don't put anything off limits. But if I started, I wouldn't stop. So it was more of like, hey, instead of like having a big dinner, do you think we could go bowling, or do you think we could go on a hike, or, try to have like a normal dinner without all the extras.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I gotcha.
And sometimes I know it's hard, because some families that's the tradition is food. And I think that that's great if that's you. I know it makes it more difficult if you have specific goals, but it's a couple days out of the year. Like, it's
Exactly.
fine. As long as you're not eating that way for weeks on end, as long as it doesn't start like a month-long overeating cycle, then you're fine overeating even 3 or 4 days in the next 2 weeks. Like, you're fine.
Absolutely.
Eat an entire pie like Kristin. That's what she does.
I've not done that in quite a while. Although also I did ask my husband, he wanted to make me a pumpkin pie the other day. And I was like, that's very sweet of you, but I would prefer not to have a pumpkin pie.
Because I will eat the entire pumpkin pie.
Yeah, pretty much. I just don't need to be doing that right
Right.
now.
Right. So if we could summarize this point, it's not a big deal. If you have training goals you need to stick to, train, find a gym, plan ahead. That's the biggest thing. Don't get there and then try to find a gym. Reach out to gyms. I'm sure that they're more than happy to take your money if that's what it entails for you to come train with them. and don't miss a training session. And if your goals are also nutrition, then that is what it is. You got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. But
But
for
if
everyone
that's
else,
not you,
you can relax a couple days.
yeah, whatever. Sometimes I even now that I'm past what I used to be, so I have a pretty good control over myself. I don't ever want to binge, but there are definitely some times where I'm like, you know what? That was so good. I'm going to eat the entire thing. And I wouldn't call it a binge because a binge to me is emotional, but this is me
Yeah.
consciously saying, yeah, I'm going to eat the whole cake. I'm going to eat the entire pie. And then it is what it is.
Yeah. I actually wanted to make that point. Like, just so don't eat like an asshole and expect it to not affect you. But if you choose to eat like an asshole, like me, and eat an
Or
entire
me.
pumpkin pie, yeah, yeah. It's not that I can't. It's not that I like have to eat the entire pumpkin pie. It's good, and I just want to eat it, and I don't need to be doing that, so I just don't want it. But if you choose to do that, if that's your decision, great. We don't care. Go for it. Just know that the next day, like maybe don't weigh yourself because the scale is going to be a little higher, and you don't want to like get into this cycle of regret and remorse about it.
Right. And that also leads into then don't restrict the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't get into a cycle. So what? You overate. It's going to be fine. It'll all work itself out in the end. But don't go into, okay, now I need to restrict, 100 or 500 calories this day. No, just
Right. Just eat normal
move
again.
on with your life.
Yep. Exactly.
And that's it for the holiday stuff.
Yeah, seriously. It's like we're almost there, right? We've got like New Year's, it's over, right? And then the gyms are gonna be packed, which is gonna be fun.
Super
I hate that time
fun.
of year.
Well, I think it's a lot better when if you're in like a specific type of gym. So if you're in a powerlifting or a weightlifting gym, I don't know that you get the influx, but if you're like us and you train at a commercial gym in the corner by yourself, cut off from the world, then yeah, we're going to have to deal with which,
Right.
you know what? Everyone was a newbie. And I think that that's great.
For sure.
I just get anxiety when I'm around a lot of people. That's me. Speaking of training, great transition, Kristin. So if any of you follow Kristin, she recently made kind of a big decision in terms of her training and her focus in life. Please.
I wouldn't say life. My life focus is like still the same, but very minute section of that is my training life, which that focus did change a little bit. So I was when we started this podcast 2 years ago, I think it was a little over 2 years ago, I was just a weightlifter and competed in masters weightlifting. And then I started adding in powerlifting. I guess when I was coming back from my surgeries, I added in powerlifting and then was like, hey, I'm pretty strong. So let's just do a powerlifting meet, and fell in love with that. And then was trying
No,
to
you crushed
train.
it. You crushed it. Like, sure, you fell in love with it, but I think it was one of those meets where you're like, oh my God, like, I'm actually really good at this.
Yeah, I didn't really expect that I was going to like be that good. I mean, I'm not like amazing, right? I'm not, but yeah,
I don't know.
I am a decent power lifter, I guess. I didn't know. Right. So, well, my second meet was when I said my total was 5 kilos under an elite total. So that was, I don't know, like a few months later, I think April to July. July was my last meet. Okay. Anyway, these details aren't important. What happened was I kept feeling this pull towards powerlifting. And so I worked out with my weightlifting coach that I was going to try to compete in both. I was trying to compete in a high level at both. I was going to go to IPL tested worlds, as well as still compete in the national and international masters weightlifting meets. And so we kind of set a plan, and I set a really lofty goal for a few things, and we started attacking it. And he was fully on board and supportive of me training both. The biggest thing that I think that everyone was concerned with was monitoring my fatigue levels and making sure I didn't get overtrained. And so we did that. We're on the lookout for all of that. And then everything was going great until it wasn't. Yeah, basically I got overtraining syndrome really snuck up on me really bad. I was aware of the symptoms of overtraining syndrome, and it still happened because the biggest thing that I was looking for was a decrease in my performance, which was not happening. But I did have all sorts of other symptoms that go along with overtraining, such as insomnia, irritability, loss of appetite, lack of mental concentration, anxiety, which I always have a little anxiety, right? That's just kind of my
Don't
personality,
we
but it was starting to
all?
get really bad. Yeah. To the point where I started having, and I was having some depression in there. Now, if you guys have listened to this podcast in the past, you know that I have a history of depression and issues like that. So I thought, like, I had all of these excuses for the things that could be going on. Well, I'm really super busy with work, and maybe I'm just experiencing a flare up of some depression or some PTSD due to things that were going on in the news, just a lot of different stuff. One of the other symptoms that can occur with overtraining syndrome is loss of motivation. And that should have been my first sign that something was wrong, because I stopped caring about training. I just didn't want to train anymore. I never not want to train. I didn't want to train. I just didn't care. I was like, who cares about worlds? Like, what does any of this matter? I wasn't myself. And then the physical strength type symptoms hit, and they hit hard.
But
I was,
those hit like a week or two after all the other signs. So you were going for a long time with your overtraining symptoms that weren't affecting your training, except for like the
yeah,
not wanting to train.
I didn't recognize them as overtraining symptoms.
Right.
I thought that it was more like mental stress that I was dealing with, to the point where I made the decision to pull out of IPL tested worlds, not because of, I pulled out in the end. I pulled out because of overtraining, but it was the mental symptoms that I was experiencing
Yeah.
from overtraining that caused me to pull out. I was like, I don't want to. I just don't want to do it. I can't explain it other than it was this feeling of like, I've never wanted to not do something so bad in my life. And I thought, well, why am I doing this then? This is ridiculous. And looking back on it, I can put all the pieces of the puzzle together and go, oh, that's what was happening. I was severely overtrained.
Whoopsies.
And so, right. So once my coach and I started to catch the performance decline, which we caught it very quickly as soon as that kicked in. But again, this had already been going on for at least a month. We deloaded, and I think we deloaded like 2 weeks. I failed some deload squats, and then I started back. So we deloaded 2 weeks. I got back into it and was warming up for squats another day, and I had 85 kilos on the bar, which is 60% of my max maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And I failed a single. I just caved in the bottom. I could not do it. And so I was like, something's really wrong here. Anyway, so after some investigation and kind of figuring things out, we figured out I just got really overtrained, and I maybe experience overtraining symptoms a little differently than some other people. I know the last time we had Jen Thompson on the podcast, she talked, I think, about deloads, didn't she?
Yeah.
And she talked about the way she knows she needs a deload is when she's unable to hit certain weights that she knows she should be hitting. And so she knows that that's time for her to take a deload. That didn't happen to me until it
No,
was too
until it
late.
was too late.
It was way too late. Way too late. So I've spent 8 or 10 weeks, maybe,
Just
trying to
trying
dig
to
out of this hole.
recover. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's probably the craziest thing I've ever dealt with. And so during this period of time, I started to realize like something has to be different. And my coach was really honest with me. He was like, this is what I was concerned with. I was concerned about this with you, training both sports. And not to say that it can't be done. It definitely can be. But I have a few things working against me. And one is that I have essentially 3 jobs. And I'm 38 and I have, a little bit of stress in my life. There's a few things that are kind of working against me that maybe suggest that this isn't a great idea for me to try to train that hard in both sports at that level.
Right.
So I how long did I talk about this? I went back and forth for
since you started powerlifting after your surgeries.
I was talking about just maybe doing powerlifting.
Or
I
just
really
maybe
felt
doing weightlifting, or maybe you could do both, or maybe I'll just do powerlifting. It was just a constant battle for you, which, I support you in whatever you decide. And, as a friend, as a training partner, I don't want to sit here and say, no, Kristin, you should do weightlifting because you're good at it. Like it's not my decision, but if you have a good training partner, they're there to listen. Like they're there to support you and they're there to listen to you talk about these things and help you rationalize. But yeah, it was hard to watch you go through because I didn't know the answer and you didn't know the answer and you had to figure it out for yourself. And all I could do was just like, look, whatever you do, I'm there for you, but I don't know what you should do.
Right. I annoyed everybody in my life for a little while because I was trying to figure this out, and the way that I figure things like this out is to talk through them, right? Like I can, when I hear myself talk about things, it really helps me figure out what it is I'm trying to do or what's important to me. So I talked about it a lot. I annoyed everyone. And in the end, the decision I came to was to focus just on powerlifting for the next year. And a lot of people have asked me, like, why did you decide that? So that's why I'm sharing that. People have asked me, they're also dual athletes trying to train weightlifting and powerlifting, asking me how I navigate that. And I'm telling you, I don't know, because I didn't do the greatest job of navigating that. I think there are people that do. It didn't work so great for me, but I also had there were other things going on. And one of the things that I really wanted to talk about on this episode was the importance of community, because in weightlifting, I also lost a little bit of my community in the last year. My coach moved back to Ireland and we were doing remote coaching with him in Ireland. And so that means that when I go to meets, my coach isn't there. He's not really interested in flying from Ireland to Atlanta for a short meet. So I had that bit of a loss there, as well as the barbell club that he used to run kind of dismantled. So everyone kind of scattered. Some people moved away. Some people moved on to different barbell clubs. Some people got injured. Some people had surgeries. I just kind of lost that community of people that I used to travel to meets with. And it started to feel like, well, I don't want to fly to Salt Lake City and be alone and not have a coach there to help me at the meet and not have any teammates there and not have anyone to support me. And so that also played a role into why I made that decision to just put weightlifting on the back burner for the next year. And then the thing that sent me over the top, I had been thinking about switching to powerlifting, and I had this like thought in my head of, well, I'm pretty decent at powerlifting, and like, what could I accomplish if I committed solely to powerlifting? If I got a coach who is a great power lifter and a great coach and can teach me things that I don't know about the sport, teach me little technique things, because I didn't really realize how technical powerlifting was until I started competing in it, and then learned really quickly. So I didn't really realize how technical powerlifting was until I started competing in it. And so I knew all along that having like a dedicated powerlifting coach could probably take me to a level that I wanted to go to or help me get there a little bit better. So I was experiencing this loss of community, this overtraining, like all of these things. And then the straw that broke the camel's back was when Bama Burr told me she was staying in South Carolina. And that's when I said, that's it. This is the community that I need. She's local, somewhat local to us. And it was like that if ever I was waiting for a sign, that was my sign. So that's why I was like, let's do this. And I just have to say, you guys know we love her because we have her on the podcast all the time. So obviously we love her. She's an amazing human being. But she said, as I'm telling her, like pouring my heart out to her in her kitchen, like, this is what I'm thinking and I don't really know what to do. She was like, we don't have to give up weightlifting. Like, what if you just kept one day a week and did some Olympic lifts, and just because you love them, and keep your technique sharp. And then that way you can go back to it down the road. And as soon as she said that, I was like, yeah, this is what we're doing. So the answer to the question of how to navigate things as a dual athlete is I don't know. But definitely monitor your overtraining symptoms. Be really aware. In fact, Mary, I'm going to have you link in the show notes. There's a really, really good article that was published in, I think, Sports Health Journal. It's a little old. It's 2012, but they really go into a lot of the symptoms of overtraining syndrome that aren't really talked about. And so I think those are really important. If you just Google overtraining syndrome symptoms, you're not going to find a lot of these things. And so and they're important. It's the things like the mood, the changes in mood and appetite and sleep that are really, 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 really important to monitor. So anyway.
Well, and I think it's important to say that being a dual athlete can be done, but as
Sure.
Kristin said, you really have to monitor everything. And I think the unfortunate / fortunate thing is that if you are at a level in weightlifting or powerlifting that you're elite, or like you're kind of the best of the best, right? You probably won't find a powerlifting coach or a weightlifting coach who is willing to program both, because they have a specialty. Right. And that's just, that kind of is what it is. If you're kind of more of a local competitor and you train, to train, but you train mostly for yourself and you're having a good time, you can totally do both.
Right.
But you're going to have to do a lot less of both than what you're thinking. You're not going to take 5 days of weightlifting training and 5 days of powerlifting training, combine them into 5 days. So you have 10 days of training into 5 days and think that that's going to work. It's going to take quite a bit of navigating between you and your coach or coaches to figure it out, if they're willing. A lot of coaches won't be willing to do that because they have a specialty, and if they're a good coach, they don't step out of their specialty because they know what they know. Like Stacy doesn't know anything really about weightlifting, but she knows that Kristin loves it, and she's willing to give her guidelines on how much volume to do,
Yep.
But she's not going to tell her what to do. And I think if you want to do a dual thing, you seriously have to be careful about how much you're doing. Like, it's if you get a coach who tries to program you basically 2 days worth of programming into one day, you have to stop, because you might be able to do it, but your body's not going to keep up with it. So you just have to be really careful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that having a coach that is willing to say, I don't know very much about this particular thing, maybe can we bring someone on to help us, kind of form a team of coaches, I think is really good. And that's absolutely what my weightlifting coach did, overall, he's the one monitoring my overall fatigue, and he wanted control of that, right? To make sure that I wasn't going to get overtrained. And that's why it's like so surprising that this happened, because we were so careful about it, but things still happen. No one, you don't know this. The same thing goes for nutrition as well as training. Everybody's body responds differently. There's so many external factors and internal factors that we're not aware of that go into your success. And so what works for someone might not work for another person. They might need an entirely different strategy. And so I learned a lot during this period of time, but ultimately, like what you were talking about, Mary, like I wanted to compete at a certain level, and it basically became the levels that I'm trying to compete at. I felt forced to pick one because my body just couldn't handle both. And I will also say that I even though I'm new to powerlifting, I'm a better power lifter than I am weightlifter. And so now we're going to see what can happen.
You're a very strong person, mentally and physically, but very much physically. And so where weightlifting, yeah, you need to be strong, but you also have to be very technically savvy. Yeah, that's your limitation.
Right.
And powerlifting, your limitation
Yeah.
isn't really technique. It's kind of technique, but it's mostly strength. Like as long as you're strong, you can do pretty well in powerlifting.
Right. Yeah. My technique in weightlifting is what limited me for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I've come a long way, but I still have a long way to go.
Yeah.
So I still get to play on Saturdays with some rules from Stacy. So
Yes,
it's fun.
some rules, which is
But
important. You got to enjoy
very
training.
important. Very important. And one of the things that made this decision so difficult, and one of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you about this today, is because sometimes in life we have to pivot and we get pulled in different directions. And I think it's especially, I don't know if it's like social media or what, like we kind of like latch on to this identity, and then once that identity starts to shift and change, because that's life, that's who we are, we change as people, and you have to be willing to kind of like let go of one identity and move on to the next. And I know that that can be really difficult for a lot of people, especially if you have like if you have been empowered by iron, and it happens in sports, right? That's hard. If you've built this awesome life from the skills that you've learned in the gym and the friendships that you've made due to your sport and like all of this stuff, then when it comes time to pivot, it can be really challenging. But I will say that once I made that decision, I felt so much better. I whatever anxiety I had, which was a lot, is gone. I feel a lot better. I'm really excited about it. But I noticed even, I think Meg Squats, I think I saw that she recently has decided she doesn't want to compete in powerlifting. Is that right? Did I
She's
see
going
that
through
right?
an identity crisis. I think we all are. But she makes
Yeah,
some
and
good
this
points.
happens.
It's like you build this whole, and for her, it's a bigger deal because she's built her entire identity around this persona that is Meg Squats.
Mhm.
And is that 100% representative of her as a person? No, but it's part of her, but it's a big part of her that's taken over her entire world. And if you don't want to be that person that that one part of you that's taken over 98% of your life, pulling back and trying to figure out what that other 2% is can be very difficult, especially if your livelihood kind of depends on what that 98% of you does. And it can be even smaller, on a smaller scale, like us. As silly as it is, we're not mixed squats by any means, and you just as a normal person, but it's having that taking a step back and thinking, well, who am I? Am I really enjoying this? Like we see a lot of people, and social media I think is to blame for this, who they seem to have it all together. Like they have this perfect relationship, they're perfect nutrition, they have perfect training. You can buy their course, you can learn how to do all this and make a monthly income of $300,000 or something absurd like that. Like they just seem to have it together. And that's the thing. They portray that because usually they can get something from you, whether it's money or likes or something. But you have to recognize that they're going through something too. If their whole identity is portraying perfection, you can bet they've got a lot of shit in their closet that's going to come out sooner or later. We all are if we don't deal with it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, and the whole thing is that like we're more than the person that we are on social media, and it's completely normal to evolve as a person.
If you
And for
don't
your
evolve as a person, like you're not a person. I don't even recognize I am 26 years old. When I started this podcast, I was 24. I hardly recognize that 24-year-old me, and that's just 2 years. I don't even recognize 18-year-old me, and that's less than 10 years. Like if you don't evolve as a person, what are you doing in this world? There's so many things to learn and so many things to change your life for the better. That if you're just stuck in your rut and going one way, then the fuck are you doing?
Yeah. Well, and change is scary, right? I think that's the
Absolutely.
thing that holds a lot of people back. Change is really scary. I was terrified. I was terrified to tell my weightlifting coach, like, I think I'm going to take a year off weightlifting. Like, so bye. Like, love you, but bye. I was terrified that the friends that I have made through weightlifting were going to be like, "What? What are you doing?" I was it, and not so much that I was afraid of what other people were going to say or think. I was afraid of what was going to happen. Like, what if I make this jump? So I know that not doing the Olympic lifts 4 days a week like I was, and only doing them 1 day a week, some of my technique is going to go away. I know that. My overall strength is going to be going up, but my technique, I'm going to lose some technique.
Yep.
I'm not going to be as technically proficient as I was. And so my fear was like, I'm going to lose all of this that I've worked really hard for the last 3 years. And, but I'm also probably going to gain a lot, right? With powerlifting. And so it was like making that leap. It was very, very, very scary for me to say, I'm pivoting and trying a new thing, and don't be scared.
Don't be scared.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's great. I'm excited. I'm happy. I love it. I love my training right now. It's awesome.
Well, that's
I
how you know
feel great. My
you've
body
made a
feels
great
good.
decision.
Yeah. And it was also just a change, right? Like maybe I just needed a change. I'm doing hypertrophy work for the first time in like 10 years. I'm loving it. I'm enjoying it. It's really fun. I don't like that pump feeling in my arms though. I don't really like that. But whatever.
I think a bro just died.
Funny story.
Oh
Funny
no.
story. One time I was squatting. Was I squatting at the gym? I think I was doing heavy squats, and I was doing a Russian squat cycle, and I had failed a squat, and you're
Oh
not
my
really
God, I
supposed to
remember
fail
this.
squats. And I was sitting down on a bench at the gym, like under the squat rack, and I was like obviously pissed off. Like I had my headphones in, my head was hanging low, like I was trying to pull it together to be able to do the next set of squats and hopefully not fail something. And this guy comes up to me and taps me on the leg and motions for me to take my headphones off. And I'm like, don't know this person. And he just touched my leg and he wants me to take my headphones off. Like, this must be an emergency. And he says, "Hey, is that a good way to get a pump in your legs?" And I was like, "What?" He said, "A pump. Are you getting a good pump in your legs that way?" And I wanted to pick this guy up and throw him across the room. I was like, "A pump? What the fuck are you talking about? A pump? I'm not after a pump in my legs. And can you not just see that I failed a squat and I'm obviously pissed off?"
Maybe that's what he
Anyway.
was wondering. He's like, do I need to fail squats to get a pump in my legs? I'm telling you, man, you get all the good stuff. Like if people approach me with this bullshit, man, they would never approach me again. Like, that's probably what happened is one person approached me. It was probably that guy. For you listeners, one time I was maxing my front squat, and it was the first time I'd maxed a front squat. So I didn't
You
know
had
what it
just
was.
started Olympic lifting.
Yeah. And so it was 208 pounds. I was lifting in pounds at that time. And I was pretty excited. And this little son bitch walks up to me, and I don't even know how the conversation started, but he like made a statement about like, oh, he can squat that. He can totally do that. And I was like, okay, well, fine. Do it right now. Squat this. Show me. Like, I was so mad because he just took what I did and he was like, oh, I can do that. And I was like, okay, fine, show me. And he was like, are you serious? And I said, absolutely. Do you want me to take some weight off? Do you want to warm up? Like, can you do, if you can do this, I'll take a step back. Like, that's fine. This kid, he was like, no, I don't need to warm up. It's not that much. He walks straight up to the bar, does 1/2 rep. So, the down part.
But didn't he do a back squat? It wasn't, he didn't do a front squat.
He tried to do a front squat, and when he finished the front, he couldn't do the front squat. So like he got like a quarter
rep
down, and then he couldn't do it. And he's like, whatever, I can back squat that. And I was like, motherfucker, I can back squat that. Watch me. Like, of course what are you talking about? Front squat and back squat? Like, maybe what happened is that guy, who I clearly embarrassed because he deserved it. Maybe he just spread a rumor around the entire town not to mess with me, because you get all these good things that like I would do that too. Like, someone walks up to me and says, is that how you get a good pump in your leg? I'm like, hey, no, that's not actually how you do it. Get on your hands and knees. I'm just going to kick you a few times in your legs. That's how you get a pump.
What you're saying is I get the weird comments because I'm too nice, and you don't get the weird comments because you just embarrass people and ridicule them.
Because they deserved it. Like, if someone walked up to me and said,
that guy did deserve it. I remember when this happened, and I was like, I was dying in the corner, like laughing. And I was like, okay, this guy's going to die right now. Like, he's not warmed up and he's clearly never front squatted. And Mary's like, do it. Come on. I want to see you do it. I was so terrified. I was like, I'm going to die. I'm going to get on my phone and I'm going to dial 911 and then I'm going to like wait because this guy's about to die.
But I did ask him if he wanted to warm up. Like, I was sincere. I said, do you want to start with the bar? I'll take weight off. Like, if you can hit this for 1 rep, I'll shut up. Like, that's fine. But he couldn't. I think if someone had walked up to me and said, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could front squat that. I don't even know how to front squat that. I would have stripped all the weight off the bar and I would have showed him how to front squat. Like,
right.
I'm happy to teach you, but what I don't tolerate is I don't tolerate people like bringing you down. It's like it's like you hit a 1 rep max deadlift and some bro walks up and he goes, oh, I can 1-hand snatch that. Or like, whatever. You're like, thank you for taking my accomplishment and making it less than.
That actually happened to me one time.
I know.
I maxed my snatch and someone was like, I PR'd my snatch and someone said, I can do that with 1 hand. And he did it. And I was like, that was a dick move, but okay.
That's when you hold your hands out in front of you, like the size of a foot long. And then you keep going down, down, down until you have this tiny little thing and you go, that's about right. And then you walk away because he has small syndrome.
Oh my God. I feel like we could start an entirely different podcast and every episode be about stupid shit people say in the gym to female strength athletes.
Oh my God. What's the one that happened to you? We're going to go with this for a minute. There was one that happened to you not that long ago that some guy came up to you. First of all, like I said, you get the best ones. He walks up to you and he goes, most of the time, traps don't look good on women, but for you, you can pull it off. And you're like, I'm sorry, what is your name? Like, who the fuck are you?
He said, I even put this in my Instagram. It's on a post in there. He said, usually women with as big a traps as you have is really unattractive, but somehow you kind of pull it off. Like, what? Okay.
Your reaction obviously was, oh my God, really? Will you marry me? Oh, I want to meet you now. Like, thank you. Oh, it's so sweet. Oh my God. And
It
then
was some weird sort of like, but I think he thought he was complimenting me. I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think he thought he was giving me a compliment, but it's kind of a backhanded compliment. And not only that, I really want to make a shirt that says, like, I don't care what your opinion of me is. Like, I don't, why people think I have nutrition clients all the time, like email me like, oh my God, you won't believe this thing this person said to me in the gym. And I kind of felt bad about it. I'm like, why people think that their opinions of our bodies matters. I don't know. I
like,
don't
you don't
like,
need to justify how you feel to me. Like, I like myself. I like my muscles. I like my body. I like what my body can do. I'm sorry if you are, if you feel inferior to me. Like, I'm sorry if you need to justify how you feel because I'm not typical or normal, quote unquote. Like,
right.
I don't understand that the lack of boundaries. Like, I would
It is
never
weird.
in my life walk up to anyone at the gym and say, normally I don't like muscle shirts and I think that they're wildly unattractive, but for some reason, dude, you can pull it off. Who the fuck would ever say that? Like, why would you ever feel anyway? I had some
No,
guy,
this is so
it,
interesting.
it's absurd. And I had a guy the other day. So, for those of you who know, Kristin and I moved our platform that we purchased to the corner of this commercial gym because they were nice enough to have us there. And this one guy came up to me and I could tell he wanted to talk to me. I had my headphones in and I looked to the ground. Like, you can tell when they want to talk to you, right? They like hover around back and forth in front of whatever you're doing.
Right,
And you just
right.
like, you do your best to like not make eye contact.
Not make eye
Yeah,
contact for
yeah.
sure.
Like looking at the ground. He walks up to me, he goes, yeah, so what are you doing over there? I was like, oh, I do Olympic lifting. It's me and I don't know if you've seen her, but there's a redhead girl who trains with me. We do lifting together. And he goes, yeah, that's pretty cool. I was like, yeah, it's fine. And I like walk away. He goes, yeah, yeah. It's very rare to see girls lifting at all. Like, are you concerned about it? And I was like, actually, my friend and I compete in this federation who have an enrollment of up of like 200%. So it's actually not rare at all in the country as a whole. But in this part of the country, in this particular city, yeah, it's pretty rare probably from comments like that. And he walked away. He didn't like what I had to say.
I'm proud of you. See, you have balls that I don't have. I wouldn't have said that,
Well,
but
you have a
I
professional
love that you
career. I
said
don't.
that. Right. I'm a business owner in the town. I can't go pissing people off.
But I can.
But right. But here's a thing that I think is really interesting. And I actually was just talking to my husband about this last night. Like, so I started in like lifting, I started lifting weights because I wanted to go to the gym to improve my appearance, right? And then I fell in love with it. And we're talking when I was like 18, 19. I fell in love with lifting. I fell in love with heavy lifting. And that was kind of the end of the story in terms of getting into it. But so it starts as an appearance thing. And I guess for a lot of people, it just stays that way. But
Mhm.
I don't understand what our obsession is with appearance and why appearance is so important.
Social media.
It's like, it's so mind blowing to me. So since I've gotten away from changing or training for aesthetics and I purely train for performance, I actually have the look that I was going for back when I was like 18 years old.
Mhm.
But, but I would have never trained the way I needed to train to have the physique that I have now, but I would have, I don't know where I'm going with this. The point is, I don't understand why we're so obsessed with how people look and talking to people about how they look. Like, I don't understand why we place so much importance on it.
I think the problem becomes when those people assume that the other people need to be validated for how they appear or what they do. Like, they feel that their opinion matters, which if it's about my body or what I eat, like your opinion doesn't matter. As you all
Does not
know,
matter at all.
it doesn't matter at all. Like I'm vegan. I'm sure you can imagine I get a lot of shit for it. And like it's all fun and games. I never get offended, but like you don't need to make those comments to begin with. I don't walk around and say, "Oh my god, I cannot believe you eat steak. You're a steak eater." I can't imagine a lot. Like, shut up. Like,
Right. Like you never shame anyone for eating meat.
no, no.
You
And
even don't care when I eat massive amounts of meat in your presence.
I've let you cook salmon in my house.
You did.
In my house. So, like, yeah,
Totally
I think
vegan house.
actually, I think that this is pretty relevant too. If you're going home for the holidays and your family doesn't really approve of what you're doing, fuck them. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
don't like throw them out of your life, but I think you need to recognize that that's just a direct reflection of their insecurities, and that if someone feels intimidated by you, you are not intimidating. They are intimidated. Like you don't need to change you to make them feel better. They need to change themselves so that they don't feel the way that they feel about you. Simple as that.
I notice that people that are in aggressive pursuit of their goals are oftentimes people feel inferior or insecure or intimidated in the presence of people that are aggressively pursuing their goals.
They feel like
It's an
that they're just
observation.
yeah.
Yeah, it because what's happening is that they're recognizing something in themselves that they feel bad about themselves for, and so they take it out on you.
Mhm.
That you're actually doing what they are afraid to do. Not necessarily that they want to go be a power lifter or be vegan or whatever, but you are actively and aggressively pursuing some sort of goal in your life, even when it's hard, even when it's super challenging, even when you don't want to. So I think that kind of freaks some people out. And I will say, Mom, if you're listening, don't take this personally. My mom used to not understand at all why I spent so much time in the gym. I mean, she knew that the gym was really good for my mental health, and she did encourage me actually several times when I had some depressive episodes. So, like, why don't you go to a spin class or go whatever, go work out? And so she definitely helped me make that connection. But as I got further and further into being a strength athlete, she's like, "Why are you spending so much time at the gym? I think you spend too much time at the gym." And like I think that there were like some comments about the level of muscle that I had that she was like kind of not sure, like, why would you want to look like that? And it's my mom's incredibly supportive. It just she didn't understand it. And
Mhm.
now that like I didn't stop because she didn't understand what I was doing. I kept going. And now she's like in awe. She's going like, "Oh my gosh, you're so strong. And I saw pictures of you on Instagram and I was blown away," and like all this stuff um that's my advice to people is always like, keep going.
Mhm.
Even when people that are incredibly important to you don't understand and maybe criticize you or say something hurtful, keep going, because once they see that you're not going to stop, they're going to get on board.
Right. Right. It's almost like a test. And I guess to close this out, um, you will never hear criticisms about your goals from people who are doing the same or more than you, like the same as or more than you. You will never hear people criticizing you if they're doing more, if they're more successful than you. Like they'll see your drive and your passion. They'll be like, you do you, man. Like that's great. That's fantastic. Because they recognize that's your goals. It may not be their goals, but they're working towards their goals. And if you hear criticism, it's usually from people who are doing less than you. As simple as
Mhm.
that. So let it go. Enjoy your holidays. Eat your treats. Get your training in.
Yeah,
And
man.
I think we'll talk to you in the new year, 2019.
January. Mhm.
And as I said, remember, we'll be starting an Eat for Strength course again in January. So just keep that in mind as you're picking out over the holidays. But until then, we'll talk to you in January.